Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna 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 Nate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashit Desatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangum Langaite Girim Yat Kripatam Aham Vande Shri Gurum Deenatarini. Hare Krishna. So today we'll see verse number 6 of chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. So Krishna, after answering the questions, he's answering the last question, how one can remember you at the time of death, Antakale. So on the same line, today is, so yesterday's verse we saw, Krishna told that whoever remembers him at the time of death will attain him. So Krishna in the next 13 to 14 verses will give the same answer to the question. The question how to remember you, Krishna at the time of death, and what happens if we remember something different. So let's see the shloka. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
tyajan tyajati antekale varam
tyajatyante kalevaram
tam tam evaiti kaunteya
tam tamaiviti kaunteya
sada tadbhava bhavitaha.
sada tadbhava bhavitaha.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
yajante antakale varam
tyajantyante kalevaram
tam tamevaiti kaunteya
tam tamevaiti kaunteya
sada tadbhava bhavitam.
sada tadbhava bhavataha.
Please chant.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam त्यजत्यन्ते कलेवरं तमेवैति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः.
Okay, so translation and purport. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Purport. The process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. But it is not true that a person who thinks of something other than Krishna attains the same transcendental nature. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharat, although great personality, thought of deer at the end of his life. So in the next life, he was transferred into body of deer. Although as a deer, he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thought during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thought at the moment of death. So this life creates our next life. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one to be transferred to transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare is the best process of successfully changing one state of being at the end of one's life. So this continuation of yesterday's verse. So the important word used here is Smaran Bhavan. So Krishna is telling about Bhav. So another meaning of Bhav is Srila Prabhupada translates nature, or we can also say emotion. So what is our emotion at the time of death? Based on that, we will get the same bhava. Sada tad bhava bhavita. So we'll get the same bhava in the next life, because we will remember that nature or that emotion, and that we will carry to the next life. So yesterday also we were discussing, like, whatever we remember, that situation or that particular emotion we have to face in the next life also, because that goes through the subtle body. So it's not very easy. We cannot assume that at the end point we will think something good. We cannot assume that. If our life, that's why Srila Prabhupada in the purport says, like, if you live a life of mode of goodness, then there is chance of thinking something good. And in goodness, we get knowledge. So through knowledge, we understand our real position and Krishna's position, which we can remember if we practice throughout the life. So it's though the last moment is maybe 1 second or less than 1 second when that last moment is. But for that one last moment, we have to spend whole our life for that one test. And being situated in mode of goodness 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, it looks easy, or we can do it. But because now in Kali Yuga, mostly the mode of passion and ignorance is active. After being in mode of goodness for some time, we naturally get tendency to go to passion or ignorance. So that's why it is very difficult to be in mode of goodness throughout the life. So of course, association of devotees, association of Srila Prabhupada books, they help. But we should have that determination and patience to be in a particular mode throughout our life. Life is long. If we consider 1 day also, if you have to remember, be in mode of goodness for 1 day, it's not easy. We get so many impediments to lose the mode, to go to passion, to get angry, to go sleep. So this is passion and ignorance. So Krishna is telling that whatever state you remember at the time of death, that you will get. So we face many problems in our this life. We are generally try to avoid the things that we don't want. And we try to avoid means what we do, actually we don't face the situation, but we have try to avoid that situation where we will be in problem, or which situation will create us emotional problems. We try to avoid it. But avoiding that situation may be a temporary solution. But if we consider the last moment of death, it may happen that that particular emotion that we try to avoid throughout our life, that emotion may come up at the time of death. And in that emotion or that bhav, if we die, then we are sure to get the same situation in the next life also. So that's always the risk, right? So that's why the yogis, and they think that these shlokas are the shlokas where the yogis try to tend to become very impersonal. They try to avoid the personal interactions with many people, so that they don't have these emotions flowing. But the solution is not to avoid the interactions or relationships, but we have to increase our attachment to Krishna. So if we increase our attachment to Krishna and we try to remember him, think of him throughout the day, not only one day, till our end point. So the end point may be today, maybe tomorrow, or maybe 50 years from now. So till 50 years, we have to do the same thing. And then at the time of death, maybe we will remember. So it's not so easy to do this thing. So whatever our emotional states that we face in our day-to-day life, it needs to be faced. There is a need to settle it down. How to settle it? It depends on the situation, everybody's mental state, everybody's emotions, attachments. But we have to go through this process. So at least, like in this lifetime, we have come across Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. We are discussing Bhagavad Gita. So we are trying to do something which is different. So we can take maximum use of this and try to increase this. Because next life we don't know. This life maybe we started after, say, at the age of 25 or 30. So next lifetime, we are not sure when we will start. We may start at 5 years age or 10 or maybe 40 or maybe 50. We don't know. So we cannot depend that, okay, if something remains next life, I can do. But Srila Prabhupada always said, like, why don't you spend one lifetime for Krishna? We don't know how many lifetimes we have already spent for ourselves. So for me also, when I heard this line, it was very shocking, like, because one lifetime does not mean 1 second. Right? We are talking about, say, maybe 70, 80 years. So into 365. So if my life is still 30 years, into 365. So many days. So many days you have to be in mode of goodness. You have to try to remember Krishna. So it's a challenging thing, right, when in this Kali Yuga. So that's why Srila Prabhupada mentions that only option is that you go on chanting. At least when you chant slowly, 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 you will get attachment to Krishna. Somehow or other, associating with devotees and chanting and reading, we'll get some attachment to Krishna. And once we get attached to Krishna, it becomes easy to remember him. Now our attachment is not so strong. That's why we have to remember. But the Brajavasis, they don't have to specially do any effort to remember it. They are naturally into that state. Their nature is like that. Their bhav is like that. They cannot think of something different from Krishna. So in all their dealings, all thoughts, Krishna is already there. But we who are still struggling to become devotee, we may not have that much attachment or that much bhav into Krishna. But we can develop this by chanting, by reading, by associating. So that's why this Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, this process is so much stressed everywhere. And with this Kali Yuga, with the short memory, short temper, agitated mind, disturbed mind, it's always easy to take shelter of chanting and depend on chanting. Maybe that will help. So Krishna will explain more details how we pass from this body to attain the ultimate goal of life. So yogis also have different processes, right? How they pass from this body. So that also Krishna will explain. But at least if we understand that the last moment of death, where we have to choose, uh, we should at least get conscious of that moment. So whenever it comes, we are at least in our mind, we are clear that this is the moment where I am choosing where to go or what's going to happen with me next. So that will also help us to actually remember Krishna or get attached to him somehow or other. Right. So tam tam eveti kaunteya, whatever you remember the time of death, whatever you think, that state you will get. So if you think of some fight, if at the end of the life, if you think of some fights with some people, some devotees or some normal people, then it's going to be next life you're going to face the same people and the same situation and everything same. You have to go through again 100 years fighting with the same thing. So we have to be very careful where we put our attachments and where we put our attention. So we'll see more details. Krishna will explain how we can attain him in the next 10 to 12 verses. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I'm not telling this that it looks like all this chapter, it looks very strong because there is talk of death only and how important it is. It's not for discouraging anyone. It's for awakening actually. That's a moment that we have in our hand. And actually that moment can come anytime. So we have to be prepared anytime actually. Hare Krishna. So any comments or questions? No need to be fearful, but to be conscious.
Probably in every person's life, this situation arises that something like this situation arises like Krishna puts that person in such situation wherein he is not able to cope up with.
At the end?
Not at the end, like whole lifetime.
Yeah, of course.
Like many times it happens that we try to avoid that situation or avoid that thing, but is it like Krishna puts us in that situation?
Yeah, of course. So if you are chanting and you have not pure desire, but at least you desire that I want to become a good devotee, for example, or I want to chant purely. If you have that desire also, then we'll be put into testing situation, that because then only we get purified. Our mind and our emotions get purified. Otherwise, how? So that's why becoming devotee or chanting is challenging, because the more we chant, the more we have to face the situation. So Krishna tries to increase our surrender by these testing situations actually. And
so more we are determined, more we are put into the testing situation.
So Krishna says in Bhagavatam also that to my devotee who really wants to come to me, I will give everything, but in such a way that he will lose the test. So that's not always a pleasant thing. It's always painful because we are attached. So there's one pastime of Srila Prabhupada in Bombay temple. He was Jew temple when the construction was going on. Prabhupada was there, and one lifetime member came, and he told that my father smokes. Can you please talk to him so that he will leave the smoking? So that person comes, and Srila Prabhupada says to him that you smoke? Yes, I smoke, but I want to quit. So he said like this. So your son told me that I should pray that you should quit this habit. So shall I pray? But if I pray to Krishna and Krishna fulfills that, then that can be very hard also. You can get sick or whatever, then you have to quit. There is no option. So then that Prabhuji said, no, I will quit on my own. Voluntarily, I will give up. I don't want to go into testing. So that's our nature. We don't want to go into testing actually. It's very difficult, painful. But Krishna, like Pandav, they have to go through all these phases, all through testing, everywhere, every step. So that's how it is. So we have to go through that process actually. And there we actually understand our attachments. That's why that testings are there. We understand our Attachment not only to things, but attachments to our thought also is a problem. So if I like something, I am attached to that liking. That is also a problem. So we should not be attached to our thoughts also. So if Krishna wants to take all those things out, then he has to put us in so many situations, and many times we fail. We cannot do what Krishna wants us to do. So he has to put us again. That's the problem, our problem. That's bhakti, but keep failing and keep trying. That is bhakti. Any other comments? Okay, let's see how Krishna tells. The next few verses, Krishna will tell so many things, and then we can understand that it's not easy to go through that process also. So Krishna, then we understand why Krishna says, you just try to remember me, rest I will take care. So let's see next verses. Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you.